Divas. Oh, so excited. Today's special guest. He's our return guest. We have Mark Wool. He's the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service here in Tallahassee. And oh my, that means it's hurricane season. So we talk all about what to look out for, what to do, how the Weather Service and meteorologists like Mark are trying to make sure that people are getting correct information. Talk a little bit about what's coming up for this storm season. And we do talk about climate change, so cover your ears if you're sensitive. Also, Crocs, Birkenstocks, and snacks. So stick with us, you won't want to miss it. Hurricane season, here we come.
Public shelters are your last resort. You really ought to plan ahead of time, like this time of year, before we've had any systems develop, or even preferably before the season even starts.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
Divas, oh my gosh, it's a treat and it's a little scary because we are welcoming back to Deeper Dive this week a repeat guest, Mark Wool, warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service here in Tallahassee. And you know what that means. It means hurricane season is upon us. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you very much. And that title is a mouthful.
It is. And you said it before while I was writing it down. And you certainly, I proved you right, did I not? We were here, I think it was last year.
Yep.
Now you're in the Speakeasy. We were in the terracotta room. And it was right after, I believe, those tornadoes hit in my old neighborhood. And now we are in the hurricane season. Atlantic's hurricane season officially kicked off June 1st.
That's right.
Maybe you can just give us a little update on what the predictions say. I know there's different models and we talked about that. We'll get into that a little later, but what are we, do we have to hold on to our hats again? What's going on?
Odds are 60% chance of an above normal season. So for reference, a normal hurricane season has 14 named storms, half of which become hurricanes, and then 3 majors. So the official NOAA forecast for this season is calling for 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes.
That's a boatload.
Yeah, it is, but not as much as was predicted for last season.
Okay. And where did we come in terms of predicted versus actual last year?
Not quite as high as predicted, but still well above normal. I think we had 18 named storms and a bunch of hurricanes. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but was verified well above normal.
It was a very active season.
Particularly for U.S. landfalls and particularly there in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
So we had 5 landfalling hurricanes just in the Gulf of Mexico last season, 1 in Texas, 1 in Louisiana, 3 in Florida. And so, yeah, definitely a busy season for the state of Florida.
Well, I think, I don't know if this had no, we recorded before this. I went down and visited my daughter. Her friend has a house, a beach house. My daughter lives in St. Pete, in Pinellas County, beach area. And I loved it. And I was so excited. You know, they got clobbered. I forget which town. It wasn't Reddington Beach, but it might have been. It was, you know, it wasn't St. Pete Beach, but one of the little towns, and Reddington Shores maybe is where it was.
Yep.
But everything around there really got clobbered, and I want to go back this summer, and the house isn't ready yet.
Yeah, I think the landfall, that was Hurricane Milton that did the damage down there. Although Helene brought a lot of storm surge in as well, even though it just sideswiped the West Coast.
Yes.
But yeah, the landfall point, the county is, for Milton, was Sarasota County, just south of St. Pete. So, yeah, so there was a lot of surge there.
So that was the northern side of it, is what they say is the worst part. You know, also, and I was going to ask you about this, but I have other people I know in the St. Pete area who, it wasn't the wind. So we like to talk a little bit about wind versus storm surge and the different kinds of damage that the hurricanes bring. And their house got totaled because of the sewage problems that they had. They got flooded, and then they had a lot of sewage issues. I think in St. Pete that was not uncommon. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the differences in predicting or responding to those different.
Well, we have a saying called flee from the water and hide from the wind. And the main reason is that the vast majority of fatalities that occur associated with tropical storms and hurricanes are due to water, not wind. Mm-hmm. Only 11% of fatalities are associated with the wind. And that's usually with trees falling into homes, right? Or onto cars with people in them.
Right.
The rest of it is storm surge, drowning people. Hurricane Ian, there was a very unfortunate number of folks that drowned in the storm surge down there back in 2022.
That was the Naples area.
Yeah. And then if it's not that, then it's the inland flooding, just from too much rain falling. So
the rivers
the rivers rising, and that can happen days to weeks after the hurricane has passed. So things like that. So the water tends to be the bigger impact for these types of systems.
And it's really frightening because you've got people who have lived in these homes, older people. I think this happened like right around the corner from this house where I was staying last year. There was an older man who did not evacuate, who drowned in his home, right there on the island there.
Unfortunately, we find that the demographics of those that perish in hurricanes and tropical storms skews largely to the elderly. And there's a number of reasons for that. Some of them are probably pretty obvious. Some of them may not have adequate transportation. Some of them may be limited financially in terms of being able to afford to evacuate and stay somewhere else. Some of them may just be too afraid to leave their home and fear not getting back to it. All of these things are very important.
Have a cat or a dog.
Pets, yes. Now, most shelters, there's at least going to be one, maybe a couple shelters around that will take them.
I think like there's a generation. I mean, I've been called a Martha, so I guess I'm too young to fit into this generation.
Okay, yeah.
But apparently, I think there are people who they don't want to leave their home because they're afraid that they won't get back. And they're afraid of looting. I mean,
looting is another thing.
Especially I don't know what these little old ladies or little old men are going to do, but I guess if you have let's not even. But I think there's that, and I do think there's kind of a misbelief that if you go to a shelter, you can't bring your pet. But also, some people, I've heard of people who went to shelters with their pets and then refused to stay because the pets had to be crated in a separate area.
That is true. And that is for the safety of the other pets.
Of course.
And the folks there. And, let's just put it out there. Public shelters are your last resort. It's better than staying home and dying.
Right.
But you really ought to plan ahead of time, like this time of year, before we've had any systems develop. Or even preferably before the season even starts, to determine, all right, where am I going to go if we're under the gun? Do I have family that I can go stay with? And you typically don't have to go too far away to get out of the harm's way, right? But if you don't have any other recourse and you choose to stay in a public shelter, you're going to get a cot. Your pet will be tended to, but in a kennel in a different room. You'll have opportunities to see them and what have you. But this is not going to be any kind of luxury living.
Right.
This is bare bone stuff.
You're not going to the Ritz-Carlton, right?
And then, of course, if you have special needs, like you need to be on a respirator or something, there are specific shelters for those folks.
Yes.
And we encourage those folks to register for special needs, because that way the county will be proactive to come get you and bring you to a place like that can keep you sustained and living.
Well, they had 2 hurricanes. I know Pinellas got hit by Milton and
sideswiped by Helene, yeah.
Right. And so they were still, there was still debris from Milton, and that got blown around and whatnot. I was wondering if you got called in to do, extra duty down there.
Not down there. We had enough to handle up here in the Big Bend because we had 2 hurricanes up here that hit not too far east of Tallahassee. Debbie in August, and then Helene made the landfall in Taylor County.
That's right. Oh, poor Taylor County.
I know. They've had 3 hurricane landfalls in 13 months. And when you think about that, you go back to the last major hurricane to hit that part of the state before Idalia, which was 2 years ago.
Right.
You got to go back to the 19th century. So then they've had 3, boom, boom, boom. Just goes to show you, you can never just sit back and think, well, we're going to be fine here. Not if you live in the state of Florida.
I think that one in particular took people, maybe not Helene, but Idalia, because these are we talked about this, these are very, resilient people, very, like a tough guy kind of attitude, and they never had to evacuate before, not going to evacuate now, and these storms are different. As a meteorologist and someone who, communicates with the public and with people like me, how difficult is it to impress upon people that what we're experiencing doesn't compare with what you've known in your history?
Right. That's always a difficult message. We ran into that with ahead of Hurricane Michael, which, as a reminder, came ashore over in Panama City, Mexico Beach in 2018. And that area had never even had a Category 4 storm, and this was a 5. And so we had to we put up a map of all the historic hurricane tracks, and there was of that strength, and there was nothing there. And we said, even your oldest grandmother is not going to remember a storm like this one. So trying to figure ways for people to internalize the threat sufficiently that if not for their own sake, then that of their families, they're going to do the right thing and take evasive action. And so that's always a challenge, especially when you're dealing with a stretch of coastline that hasn't experienced a hurricane in a good long time. Now, I'm going to segue into one of the things that I'm very concerned about. East of Tallahassee, 3 hurricanes in 13 months. A lot of people here in Leon County, which is where Tallahassee is, right, the capital, think they've been through a hurricane. And really, they've only been sideswiped with mostly tropical storm conditions. Now, back in 2016, Hermine was a Cat 1 that came through. That's the one
that put the tree through my roof, and I was without power for 2 weeks.
That was a Category 1, and it did a lot of damage in the city, and it really kind of spurred government from
that was a Cat 1.
Local, county, and state level.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm keep interrupting you because that's how I roll, but so don't take it personally. We're having a conversation here, right? But they got a lot of criticism, the local government, for being unprepared. Yep. And so we went from what's happening around the time of Hermine to now when it drizzles, I get an alert from the city and the county, right? And I'm not complaining.
No.
I'm not complaining because all it takes, I got to tell you, you have one tree come through your roof in the middle of the night and you can hear the tree. And I don't want to compare my experience with what other people have experienced that was Cat 4 or 5 or whatever. Right. But it scared the bejesus out of me. And I now live in a house that has essentially a bunker. Yeah. I have kind of a cellar.
I can agree with that fear. Because for Hermine, I stayed home and a massive 100-foot pecan tree fell, crushed my pool. It sounded like a bomb went off, shook the house. So lucky it didn't hit the house, and that was only by a matter of like 10, 20 feet. Yep. But it was still, and when it's pitch black out, it was a surreal experience. Yes. And transformers are blowing. It sounded like a war zone out there. And this is just a Category 1, but we hadn't experienced that here in a generation.
Yes.
So what I really have concerns about now is that part of the state from here west through the Panhandle, that it's been a number of years. Michael was... it'll be 7 years this October. New people that have moved in, people that have lived through it, they're never going to forget. And will be highly motivated.
Yes.
But areas west of there or right here, say from Apalachicola up to Tallahassee, I really hope that people don't get too nonchalant about it, because Helene was predicted to come right up the gut of the Appalachian Bay and right across Tallahassee. And had it kept that course and not shifted in the final hours, we would still be recovering today.
I think thank you for stressing that, because I like I say, people don't really get it until you get it. I had some of the folks from Panama City and Bay County on the show to do the 5-year commemoration of Michael, and I have a friend who has close ties to that region, and we had Rep Griffiths and some other folks on, and it was, that was 2 years ago now. Gosh, yeah. You get the storms coming and they look like they're coming to that region. People who lived through Michael, they're clearing out they're stocking up on water and supplies. They're emptying the shelves because they know what it was like.
So they're responsive and they're motivated.
Yeah, they're motivated.
And they're scared too. There's some PTSD involved.
Yes.
And so that segment of population you don't have to worry about in terms of getting them to internalize the threat. They've experienced the worst. But there are other populations that haven't. And that's something that's always a challenge for us that are in this line of work, that are trying to communicate important information to the general public. And just because, it wasn't so bad last time doesn't mean that that's going to be the case the next time. And look at the tornado morning is a classic example. We don't ever get tornadoes in the city of Tallahassee. We got 2 that morning.
Right.
And so, you just never say never, not with weather.
So we're doing it now. That's what we're doing. Our listeners, our divas are very sophisticated. And so I'm sure that they've got plans and they've got, they adhere to the warnings. But as you're going around and educating people, what is your advice? So have a plan. Obviously, that's, get a plan. I remember Craig Fugate, listening to him talk about that. I played him in the press skits back when we used to do the press skits. I dressed up with the DEM cap and shirt and played Craig Fugate in the press skits. So have a plan, but how are you messaging to people? What do they need to do? They need to watch their phone. They need to sign up for alerts.
There's a lot of things.
Okay.
Have a plan is still great advice. You can go to the National Hurricane Center website, or really just Google hurricane preparedness. And there's stuff all over, like what to have in your emergency supply kit. The 1 gallon of water per person and per pet per day. That's a lot of water. Be prepared to be without power. We used to tell people for 3 days to 5, I'd say a week.
Really?
Yeah. That's based on what we've seen with recent hurricanes, right? Now, I'm going to give a big shout out to utility companies and, the assistance that this community gets from external utility services and vice versa, right? Because after the morning of the tornadoes, boy, did they get everything back on. There were more utility poles snapped in the morning of the tornadoes than there had been with Michael, Irma, and Hermine combined.
Wow.
So be prepared to live without electricity.
Is that the one? Remember, I'm trying to remember which storm it was. I think it was those tornadoes where all the communications went down, all the phone went down, all the internet. Was that the one, or was that
not for all the county? Because those were kind of paths rather than the general. I
just remember not being able to call my daughter or text her or find out what was going on. We were all sitting out. I don't know if that was a hurricane last year. We were all sitting in my neighborhood. We're all sitting out in the front yards, kind of trying to piece together what was going on, because all the cell towers were out.
There was a really bad thunderstorms with strong straight line winds that knocked a bunch of people, the cell phone towers out. I think I remember what you're talking about, but it's the same issue. You have to be prepared to not have your normal means of communication, to not have electricity. So you need to have food that won't spoil, right? You need to have potable water, plenty of it. You need to have batteries for your flashlight and for your radio, because a battery-powered radio may be the only means you have.
I have the cranking.
Oh, the no-weather radio?
The cranking and solar.
Those are cool, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because it's the Cro-Magnon, like the old-fashioned ways to power up a radio. But hey, why not just sit there with your whole muscle strength?
Yeah, you're getting a workout too.
I think those are pretty cool.
I guess that makes me a Martha for sure.
Well, they should be in your survival kit.
That is in my kit. Yeah, that one, because, batteries, whatever, because most of my batteries are rechargeable. And then I guess you have to sit in the car to recharge, but whatever. I like that. And I like the idea that it's sitting in the sun and getting charged.
So definitely have a plan.
Okay.
And one of the first things you have to determine is, are you going to ride it out? Do you live in a well-built home that's going to withstand hurricane force winds? Have you had your roof retrofitted and all of that? And you should know this because it'll be reflected in your homeowner's insurance as a reduction.
Right.
So, or do you live in a double-wide mobile home, whether you're in the city or out in the country? That's not going to be a safe place during a hurricane.
No.
Or a tornado.
Right.
So you have to make plans ahead of time. Who am I going to stay with? You can't just frantically at the last minute, oh my God, a hurricane's coming, and try to find a place to go.
Right.
So try to get that taken care of ahead of time.
Part of the problem with that, Mark, is these storms, like we've seen them come in on one side and then go all the way across the state. And people who've evacuated from where they thought they were going to be vulnerable end up in the bullseye.
That's happened. Yes.
That's kind of, I guess you have to have contingencies, right? Because it makes it hard to
You may have a perfect
plan.
setup, for an area east, but if the storm's moving off to the northeast and that area is going to become under the gun after it's left here, then that's not a good option. For a lot of the recent hurricanes, going west would have been a good idea.
Yeah. But
if you live on the peninsula, where there's limited options in terms of going east-west, right? Can you get far enough south? Well, I don't know. Look at Milton. It came across the central part of the state, but then there were all those tornadoes in the southern part of the state, big ones too.
Yes.
Really unbelievable, that tornado outbreak down there. That's why you need to have a plan ahead of time. Do you have friends, family north? And don't think that you're the only one in Peninsula Florida that's going to be evacuating north, because, the Georgia evacuation centers are overwhelmed by residents of Florida fleeing the state. So give yourself enough time.
Bring your patience with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And have enough gas.
PATIENCE with you, because people get frazzled, they get frazzazzled, they get scared, they get frustrated,
and that's why the more you can plan ahead of time, the less frazzazzled you'll be.
Right. I got him to say frazzazzled.
Got me too. Yep.
You can use that anytime. You don't even need to give me a nickel.
All right.
So you get a plan, you sign up for all the advisories that you can. I do. Yep. I get them, here, there, and everywhere. And then heed them, pay attention to them, make sure you have contingency, water for a week. Now we're saying be prepared to go without power and water for a week. Obviously, the medications, they say have 30 days worth of medications.
Right. If there's an emergency declared, you can get an additional 30 days worth of your prescription medications you wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. So, yes, that's a very important one. I'm glad you brought it up. But here's, too many people die after the storm's gone by. And that's because they're trying to get back in there and do repairs to their property too fast. It's hot after hurricanes pass by in the peak of the season. You may not be used to operating a chainsaw in a safe way. Lots of people don't know how to properly install a generator. So carbon monoxide poisoning comes into play. Let's talk about
generators. I know there's a lot of warning about obviously we've been told a lot not to run them inside.
Correct.
So we don't run them inside.
Or even a carport.
See, I'm not sure that I even knew that. Well, I guess you don't, it's an enclosed area.
It's too enclosed. It's not fully enclosed.
You certainly don't want it anywhere where the uptake, where it's going to be circulating into the house, right? Or you're going to be standing near it and you're going to get that carbon
It needs to be 20 feet away from your home.
Do you have a generator?
I do not.
See, this is a debate. I had the guys, my reporter roundtable with 2 TV reporters. I'm sure you know them, Forrest Saunders and Jason Delgado. Mm-hmm. They're great. They're my faves. And we were debating whether or not to get a generator, whether you should or shouldn't. I don't have one. I have every now and then I have a friend who's a manager at Costco, and every now and then they'll go on sale and she'll say, "Hey, generators are on sale. You want me to put one aside for you?" And I debate about it, and it just seems like an expensive outlay. And to be perfectly frank, I'm not sure that I'm capable of setting it up and using it properly.
Yeah. You could have somebody do the installation, but you're right. You'd have to make sure you checked up on that. Now, first of all, a lot of families can't afford a generator, at least not a whole home generator, right?
I'm talking about the one that's about $1,000 or whatever, right? Isn't that about what you can get one for?
I think so. $1,000? Yeah, enough to keep your refrigerator running.
Essentially,
and charge your phones.
Keep your insulin like cold.
Yeah,
that's what I care about.
So it is a luxury to have a generator,
right?
Right, but boy, it's a nice one to have. Now I say that, and I still haven't. Every year, I'm like, I ought to get a generator next season. But see, for me, based on what I'm stuck at work.
You are,
and I'm sleeping at the office, and it's plenty of air conditioning there. So that's part of the reason, I suppose, that I haven't been as motivated as some. But if you can afford it and you want to be comfortable and the envy of all your neighbors, then you go ahead and get one. But to your point, you got to know what you're doing. Don't just toss the instructions aside and think, well, heck, this has got to be easy.
Right. It's not an IKEA flat pack.
Right. So be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you seeing more people? I mean, are you seeing more accidents related to generators and chainsaws and things like that?
I don't know about the trend.
Okay.
I don't have that information handy, but I do know we see that type of thing happen after every major hurricane.
Of course.
And it's not just that. It's people having heat stroke. It's people getting electrocuted because they're either, they're moving downed wires, assuming their power's out of the way. And
people are idiots.
And people can be, but when you've been through a trauma like that and you're just absolutely desperate to get home, you take risks, including driving through floodwater, which is another dangerous thing.
Wading through it.
Even worse.
With your children. It drives me bananas when I see that.
Snakes.
I know.
Probably fecal matter. I mean, things that we don't even want to,
Yes, barefoot in there. It's
meant to be, unless you're trying to save your life. But beyond that, no.
Yeah, and I mean, not just to go out and have a look-see.
No, or let your kids play in it.
No. Okay, good. I'm glad we agree on that. We'll be right back with Mark Wool. Divas, you know what time it is. You know what time it is. It's time for the news in haikus. It's the news in haikus. Buckle up, divas. Hurricane season is here. Nature knows no bounds. The news in haikus. The news in haikus. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your haiku. You can slide them into my DMs, or you can send them to podcasts, that's podcasts with an S, at e.newsserviceflorida.com. Wherever you're listening, please don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating if you like what we're doing. And we're back in the Speakeasy with Mark Wool. He is the warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service here in Tallahassee. We're talking about serious issues here, and I would be remiss. I'm just going to ask you answer whatever you're allowed to answer, and don't answer, because I'm not going to lose you a job while you still have one. But obviously, a lot of talk about cuts to the National Weather Service, cuts to NOAA, the National Hurricane Center. In fact, I was just mentioning to you that about 10 minutes before you got here, Congressman Jared Moskowitz, who used to be the state's emergency management director, who's now in Congress.
I've met him.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's a great guy.
Yeah.
We had scheduled him on the show, and then he can't, anyway, he's a very important person. I think he's too important for the divas, but hear that, Jared? But anyway, his office sent out a press release, and he is sponsoring, I'm going to look it up. They are sponsoring a measure. They're calling it the Weather Workforce Improvement Act. And in the press release, it said that the National Weather Service has lost more than 550 employees so far this year due to layoffs and early retirements. I think that's probably part of the DOGE efforts.
That's right.
And that in Central and South Florida, NWS offices are up to nearly 40% understaffed, including at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, which is short 5 specialists.
Mm-hmm.
So are you aware of any of that data and as it relates to our region?
I wasn't aware of this initiative that Jared's doing.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
certainly aware of the data and the number of personnel we've lost as an agency, and it's very concerning. We do have contingency plans in effect as an agency to surge staffing from the offices not impacted to where the action is.
In addition to you spending the night at wherever.
Right. Well, that was a given before, even before this.
Right.
However, we just recently, and by recently I mean in the last couple of weeks, have gotten an exemption as an agency and are being allowed to hire.
Oh.
So finally, the curve is moving the other direction from no more layoffs.
Okay.
Because, there was a lot of the entry-level folks that were on probationary status that just got fired for no reason. So we lost the incoming new generation.
Okay.
And then all of the knowledge and management
He's pointing
experience.
To his head.
Yeah,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's sitting right across from me.
Yeah. Took the early retirement.
Right.
So that's a huge loss. And there are some offices in a lot worse shape than, say, my office here in Tallahassee. One office in Houston, Texas has no management team left at all. All 4 of them left. These 120 positions that are going to be, these new hires are going to be targeted at those offices that are in most need. And then I think after that, there'll be another round.
Oh, so it's kind of out with the old, in with the new.
Yeah, I mean, it took.
Was there a loyalty pledge you have to sign?
Well, it took too long to get this exemption, unfortunately.
Right.
So now, we had people that had just gotten hired and hadn't even been able to report to their station yet.
Well, you also don't want that in the run-up to hurricane season.
Correct. And I think that's where this urgency is coming from.
Right.
And, when I go out and talk to the community, that's one of the first things they ask. So this is front of mind for a lot of people.
Sure.
And, we had to be very close to the vest. But obviously, the cat's out of the bag. Everybody knows what's going on, and I'm not.
Well, I just read to you from a press release,
right.
so this is from
I'm not going to lie to anybody about how things are.
Right.
When I'm asked, will you be able to do the job you need to do this hurricane season? I answer honestly that yes. We are down 3 forecasters from full staffing, but we still have enough.
You are down 3 forecasters in Tallahassee?
Yes.
And how many do you normally have?
I think 14. So we have
just
11 out of 14 still there.
Okay, so
and our entire management team. So all of whom are meteorologists like myself.
Right.
We're okay here. Other offices like Mobile are in a lot worse shape.
Really?
So they're going to be getting some of these new hires. We're not, because we're not out in a critical need situation.
But in the meantime, it's hurricane season. And so, what could hit the fan tomorrow.
Yep.
And that means maybe you and your cohorts are going to be driving over to Mobile to help out.
Yes, we've got contingency plans already in the work to do a mutual aid between them and us.
What about the forecasting, at the Hurricane Center?
Mm-hmm.
Those forecasters, is it affecting the ability to predict, to analyze the data that's coming in, or I guess basically to keep people safe?
I still think that there are enough personnel down there that can fill in, including from their management. and do the job that the specialist does, which is putting out the official forecast for Storm A or Storm B. And by the way, each of them only has one storm.
Those. I do love to read those.
So there's not going to be where one guy's got to handle two different hurricanes. They always have them divvied up.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's the same person, those advisories that I'm reading, it's the same person that's writing those?
Yes. That, and of
the
course,
NOAA...
they're going to work shifts too. So
I understand that, but they just do the one. That's
they do.
Like
so if there's one hurricane, whoever's on shift at that time, and they take it over, they do it, and then they stay with that. And then if another one develops out further into the ocean, there'll be another specialist
like
assigned
an air traffic controller kind of thing.
So you're not doing double duty. And now sometimes there's 3 or 4 at the same time.
Sure.
And you may have to handle more.
The weather on these advisories and these I call them advisories, but what are the?
That's correct.
The languaging it's very, it's meteorological, total, geek squad stuff, and I say that in a very loving way. But I can sometimes you can get the flavor like that there's different people writing them because they have a certain way of phrasing things.
Sure.
Do you catch that when
there's generational differences? There's some of the folks down there
Martha
have been there for
writes a certain
long time, and others are newer or maybe a little more.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they got a top-notch crew down there at the Hurricane Center.
You're not worried about your ability or the safety of the public?
No, there's a lot of moving parts, and our regional headquarters is going to be helping move the chess pieces around for each storm that comes along. So we'll be moving a lot of resources around. There'll be a lot more short-term travel.
Mm-hmm. What happens if we don't fill these positions and these storms start rolling in?
It's not a tenable situation in the long run. But the fact that this exemption has finally been approved and we are going to finally reverse the drain of personnel and start bringing some more people in. Now, it's going to take some time. I mean, we lost, I think you quoted 556. I've heard 600 personnel, and this is 120. So it's the beginning.
Right.
But it's more than just a Band-Aid. This is really going to help those offices that are in really dire straits. And then the presumption would be that after that, there'll be another round of jobs advertised. So our office has enough here in Tallahassee. Some offices are going to need help from us and other well-off offices, if you will, when hurricanes come. We've got a deployment pool all set up. This has all been planned ahead of time. And then that'll be directed by our regional headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas. So I tell you, it's the southern region of the National Weather Service, which is headquartered in Fort Worth, really has a lot of experience with logistics and moving resources around at the last minute and getting people to where they need to be so we can do the mission.
Well, that's comforting. Thank you for telling us that. We did talk about this last time, and I do think it relates to, you're a meteorologist, you're a scientist, you're not a politician, so I'm not going to ask you about the politics of this, but I did ask you about climate change. Mm-hmm. And I was glad that I did because you wanted to talk about it. Are you still allowed to talk about climate change?
I am. I will.
I mean, is that what we call? I mean, also now I was listening to the questioning of the person who got Dr. Santa Ono, who was selected to head the University of Florida, and the Board of Governors did not approve that selection. But during his questioning, one of the things that he was attacked for was his position on climate change. Mm-hmm. And I was a little bit surprised that that's something that is so verboten now that you can't have a position on it. But anyway, let me ask you, we're seeing these stronger storms. We're seeing more of them. How is the temperature of the ocean affecting that?
Well, I may not speak to politics, but I will say with certainty that the topic of climate change has been politicized. to the detriment of the safety of this country. I'll speak pretty clearly to that. There's no place for politics in science, and the science is there. It is evident that more extreme weather, not just hurricanes, has been predicted by climate change science for decades now. So to bury your head in the sand and say, we don't want to hear anything about that because of politics is really, very irresponsible.
It does a disservice to the public.
It's a disservice. You are not keeping the well-being of your constituents in mind when you do things like forbid a discussion on climate change during an interview like that. I mean, it's really unfortunate. However, that's the world we live in. So whenever I'm asked to speak on it, I speak the science. And the science is that getting tornadoes through Tallahassee, getting the couple of major hurricanes in Taylor County, Florida, flash flood emergencies we had here in Leon County last year. We had some up in Valdosta, Georgia, too. The winter storm. I mean, let's just talk about that for a minute.
Oh, my gosh. Do you want to see the pictures of my snowman?
Yes, everybody made a snowman or a sleet man.
Right.
I mean, that was an astounding anomaly. And by anomaly, I mean way far away from what would be considered normal. And it was a huge blizzard all the way from Texas up to the Carolinas. And we got 3 inches of sleet at my house. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So all of those things.
I had snow on the ground. I'm north facing. I had snow on the ground for like 4 days.
Yeah. I couldn't park in my driveway because it's a sloping driveway down towards the house. So I'm like, it's out on the road till it melted.
Yeah.
It took that long. So yeah, that's just another example. And that's one that's, counterintuitive because it's cold weather. It's winter. But all types of weather, more extreme weather. What about all that flooding up in the Appalachians from Helene?
Right.
This type of thing has been predicted by climate change scientists, the International Panel on Climate Change. Those are climatologists from every country on the planet, or virtually most of them. So this isn't stuff we're making up.
So what is causing it?
Well, I mean, that's another thing that's pretty clear. Increasing carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Yeah. And it's been going up steadily for the last century, and it's no sign that it's going to stop going up. So
that's what? Less trees, more cars, more.
Yeah.
I mean, is it cows?
The industrial. Cows contribute to the methane part of it, but carbon dioxide is far and away the bigger contributor, and that's from man-made things, the Industrial Revolution, and all the pollutants we put into the air.
Yeah, and the ocean. I mean, I've seen stories about coral bleaching and the water just being warmer, and the temperatures of the oceans getting warmer and warmer.
That's true. Yeah, not just the atmosphere gets warmer. The average temperature of the globe, we've had the hottest 10 years in history in the globe were the last 10. And the ocean's getting warmer and warmer, which, of course, helps fuel stronger hurricanes. So this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. If the atmosphere is warming, the ocean takes a lot longer to warm, but eventually it's going to start warming as well. And we're seeing that happening. Well,
we're seeing it in the Gulf, certainly, right?
Right.
Let's take a little bit. Thank you for that. Now, are there other weather resources that people should, now with social media, and you see these guys out there and they're crazy, some of them, and some of them are quite knowledgeable. And there's one I think that I watch, Mike's
weather page.
Yes, I do watch that one, and listen to with his dog. I think he does his little thing with his dog. So how do we know who to trust? There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and certainly we don't want people running around in their cars chasing storms. But
so we have a term for those folks. We call them social, air quotes, meteorologists. Social meteorologists.
Okay, wait a second.
There you go. So they're a problem because they spread misinformation. Thanks.
Yeah.
And so one of our jobs is to, when we recognize them on social media, to respond. And also just
social meteorologist. That's hilarious.
And then just implore general public, look, if it looks like it's a little too weird to be true, it probably is. Go to official sources, and that's the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center, which, by the way, all the same organization.
Right.
So I would just recommend folks do that and resist being clickbait. So.
Are there any that you follow that you trust?
No, I don't need to because I work.
Right, exactly, because you are the man, right?
So
yes,
I don't need to follow them. Mike's is very well respected. I know folks over at the state, emergency management area, use resources from his page.
Oh, wow.
You know, he's as far as those types of entrepreneurs go, he's probably one of the best.
I didn't mean to single him out.
But he's one of the most well-known and most popular.
Right.
Everybody's
and he's around here. Like he's up in I think he's in Florida anyway.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where he is, but I just met a guy down in Perry that is getting into the game and doing all that. And when I was down there doing a hurricane season briefing, and I'm like, he didn't seem all that, loopy or anything. Right. But at the same time, what do I know? I just had a few minutes talking with him. I liked what he said. There was always steer people towards your.
That's good.
And that's good. That means, you're expanding our reach if that's the role you're going to fill.
Right.
And I support those.
If they're elevating you. But I wonder, it is part of your job now or someone's job at NWS or wherever to monitor what information is being put out there, because you have to catch in misinformation and disinformation.
Well, we continuously monitor our social media feeds. And especially during high-end events where we're expecting severe weather, tornadoes, or if there's an incoming hurricane or whatever, we've got someone dedicated. That's all they're going to do is look at the social media. And we're going to push a lot of stuff out, but we're also going to be looking at the comments and try to steer, especially when time is critical and we just cannot let confusion reign.
Yeah.
We try to do our best to intervene whenever we catch something, but some stuff's going to leak by.
I got a couple of fun questions for you. Crocs or Birkenstocks?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like either of them.
Okay. I did see somebody say Crocs aren't, I love me some Crocs. I did say somebody said they're not good for post-storm wear because there's a lot of nails that are sticking up and they go right through the Crocs.
Well, that's happened to me twice, a nail through the boots. I was wearing boots.
Oh, okay.
Doing post-damage surveys, one for a tornado, one for Helene.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I need to get more new boots because apparently they're not strong enough.
Yeah, I guess they're still tipped ones. The steel soled would be pretty darn heavy. I don't know if you'd be willing. Okay.
Not.
Are they, this is a very serious question. I had a debate about this. Are they wellies, waders, rain boots, mucker? What do you call them?
I've heard all of those.
What do you call them?
I don't really refer to them because I don't wear those when I'm out.
You don't?
No, I don't need to wade through the water that deep.
Okay. Well, you don't in the garden or anything?
I don't garden.
I call them wellies. You don't garden. You're sitting in the pool. You're lounging in the pool.
Right,
Why garden? We're big on snacks here at Deeper Dive.
Okay.
And so I'd like to know, what are your go-to snacks when you're either preparing for a storm, and then I'm going to ask you what's in your kit, or when you're on duty sleeping over at the headquarters.
Okay. Right. Okay. When I thought you were going to stop at your go-to snacks, it's ice cream, but not when you're leading up to a hurricane. Do not go out and buy a lot of ice cream.
Right.
Then.
No, you're deprived.
I like combos.
The
pretzels with the cheese.
Okay.
Yeah. And little crackers, like the square
like the
things.
peanut butter, malted peanut butter, or malted.
Like those.
Yes. Okay.
So, and the neat cut crackers.
Yes.
Those are good. Those are good snacks that are
Those are good.
Yeah.
All right. And they have protein in them too.
Right.
So they'll
peanut
help
butter ones. Sure.
tide you over. Okay. And then when you're preparing for a hurricane at home, I think you told us a couple of things that are in your kit.
Yeah.
What all is in your hurricane kit?
I got stuff that can't see. This house we bought a couple years ago does not have a gas stove, and boy, do I miss it. Because
I know, me too.
You could use it, cook a lot more things. Now,
do you have a gas grill?
Yes. So
I'm on the gas grill.
So the gas grill is your out, right?
Right.
So other than that, you you get stuff that you can cook on a pot on the grill. I mean, what else can you do? So, that type of thing.
So canned
stuff, canned food.
I have a lot of tuna fish.
Tuna fish is a good one. Of course, with that, you need mayonnaise, and so you got to keep that chilled.
I hate mayonnaise, so I get the tuna fish in oil.
Mm-hmm. I got to have mayonnaise in mine.
Gosh, okay, well, then you're screwed.
Yeah. So, I mean, just whatever can be heated on the grill.
Right. How do you make coffee? Do you drink coffee?
Yeah, I do. You wouldn't really be able to. You could heat up some water but I drink my coffee at the office. When
that's right.
Coming.
You have the office. You're kind of an outlier.
Or just do without
not
it.
A great question for you.
Yeah.
I guess what you've seen? How long have you been doing this?
I've been in the agency 31 years.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. So you've seen a lot of storms.
I have.
Is there anything that sticks out in your mind? Do you have specific incidents or events or encounters, experiences that you feel like you'll never forget, or that
certainly when we were out doing high watermark surveys after Hurricane Michael over Mexico Beach, that was a devastating day.
Yeah.
I'd vacationed over there. I knew what it looked like before the hurricane.
Lovely.
And to see what was left was, and especially knowing that about 4 or 5 people perished.
Yeah.
They're drowning in the storm surge. What a horrible way to die. It was a very, very emotional day to see all of that. So one of the more difficult days in my career. Another would be a time when I did a damage survey after tornadoes ripped through a mobile home park. Yeah, and 11 people perished there. And you're talking to survivors, and you're talking to...
I know.
And I remember walking down the road just hearing all these dogs barking that had been left behind. And that was difficult. So, they don't teach you that in meteorology school, how to deal with these types of things. And they're rare days when I have to go out and do that kind of thing. But it's definitely, it can sap your strength.
I remember, I think I told you about this when I was in covered Katrina. I was part of the team for the Palm Beach Post. We had one team go to New Orleans, and the other team went to Biloxi. Mm-hmm. And Biloxi got that water. It was
20 feet of storm surge, I think.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And we were there. We spent the night of Katrina in a hotel that had no power in downtown Mobile, and then drove over as soon as it got light. And we were in that part of Biloxi near what used to be the Strip, and at the time, and people were starting to come back. It was just complete blocks were raised. There was just rubble for blocks, and people were starting to come in, and I had a photographer with me, and a woman trying to find out where she could get formula and diapers for the baby. We had found out, we had stumbled on, not literally, the Red Cross, so we tried to direct her to the Red Cross. Mm-hmm. People sifting through their photos on what is their property, and it's someone they know from blocks away. And you've seen the pictures, and the people who have experienced this know what it's like. But as you're there as an onlooker, and as a reporter, you're there as a first responder, right. Sort of. I'm there as a reporter, and I always felt kind of ghoulish doing this and documenting their response and their very emotional state. And yet we were able to help. We gave away all the food that we had with us. We gave water away. We actually found an older man who had his boat. He was moving his boat from Pas Christian to someplace else and got washed ashore. And we found this boat in the middle of a parking lot, and my photographer was taking pictures of this boat, and we heard a dog. And so I said, oh no, there's a dog. So I went on the boat, and there was an old man on there who had gotten injured.
Oh, wow.
And so we found him, and, we got 911, and like a year later, his daughter called me and thanked me. And, we had him in a story that got picked up all over the place. And so, I felt like I was helping.
Sure, yeah.
And that was just, that'll never leave me, the scene and the people and just the raw grief, and they're shell-shocked. Also, I did travel with former Governor Charlie Crist, probably to that one of those same areas where the where a mobile home park was. It was like an over 55 mobile home park.
Yeah,
so this
one was up in Georgia, though.
Okay, that wasn't the one then. I guess they're
similar scene,
as
probably.
Vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but this was all older people, and almost all, nobody had left, and people died. And I had flown in there with the governor at the time, and it was just people, desperate for attention and needs, I don't even, I'm stumbling. It's quite an experience. If you've never experienced that, and I hope people never do.
You're going into these zones because you have a job to do, right? And as do I.
Right.
And it's very important, like especially for the tornado ones, where you're coming across folks all the time that are there picking up the pieces and picking through the rubble, and then when you encounter the ones that have just lost somebody or somebody's girl, I was introduced, telling why I'm there. And I've never been turned away. But sometimes you're going to stand there and they're going to talk your ear off. You know what? I don't care how long my day is. I'm going to stand there and listen to them.
They need to.
And that's really what you can do.
Well, good
you
for
can be
you.
a set of ears.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah.
So that's how I try to contribute.
Well, I appreciate all the work that you do. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to go over? Okay.
There is one more thing, and I'm glad that you asked that question.
Of course.
And I think I advertised this last time we talked last year, but beginning the week of the 21st of July, we're having our second annual series of completely free virtual webinars on hurricane season safety and preparedness.
Oh, right.
There's going to be 3 a day for the Monday through the Thursday, a morning, a midday, and an evening session. And the first day is going to be about preseason or, early on preparedness. We're not preseason anymore, but still, it's good advice. And then there's going to be day 2 is going to be, all right, there's a storm out there. What do I need to be doing now? Day 3 is going to be riding out the storm, do's and don'ts. And the 4th day is going to be surviving after the storm has gone by, with all the things we talked about earlier. These are free. We had well over 4,000 people register last year.
Oh, I'm glad.
We're hoping to beat that. So in order to get to the registration page, go to our website. It's weather.gov/Tallahassee.
That's easy.
Right there at the top of the page, there's a registration link.
Okay. Weather.gov/Tallahassee. I'll put that in the show notes for today. Mark Wool, I'm going to try to say it without stumbling. Warning Coordination Meteorologist, National Weather Service, Tallahassee. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been my pleasure as well.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.